There's a lot that's been happening, a lot that's been going on, and I thought now would be a good time to, oh well, here, we're having our little, our gremlins, our glitches, or whatever the case might be. Just to tell you what's been happening in like the state of the church. It's been a year and a half different than any other year and a half that we've had. We have been all over the place, and we haven't been driving those events. We've been kind of experiencing those events with everyone else. And I just thought we would stop and to take a little time and go over where we've been. I'm going to read out of the book of Ephesians, chapter 3. It is a passage that I come back to again and again and again because I think it's good, and I think we really don't understand all that's happening with it. Paul is writing, first, Ephesians is not a letter to a place. It's not like Philippians, it's written to Philippi. It's not like Galatians, written to Galatia. Ephesians is written as a letter to be passed around everywhere. And so Paul writes, and he says this, I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of His power. Although I am less than the least of all God's people, this grace was given me to preach to the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ, and to make plain to everyone the administration of this mystery, which for ages past was kept hidden in God who created all things. His intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms, according to His eternal purpose that He accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. In Him and through faith in Him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. And I'll get to that passage in a bit. Let me just talk about where we've been. It's interesting. In the last year and a half, we started off, we went online for a number of weeks. And then May 22nd, 2020, our governor lost a court case. And so churches are exempt from all these things that are flying around. And on May 31st, because that was a Friday, it was too early to get it for Sunday, we met outside for a few weeks. Then we were inside, and we took half the chairs out, and we went to 2 services. We even had online communion services a couple different times. We did that. We had another Sunday in there where we had like a foot of snow, and I was in my living room, and I started the service, and nobody could hear me because I didn't hit the press volume on button. And so someone texted my wife, and my wife was watching upstairs, and she shouted, "Turn the volume on!" So I had to start from scratch and went over from the living room. We did new things. We tried new things. We did them on short notice. We turned on a dime. We had to be nimble, all this kind of thing. To our worship team, who for the first 8 or 9 weeks, worship team came in here and played to an empty room. And then for the next year or so, the worship team played 2 services and listened to 2 sermons. And you think your week was bad. And doubled up. I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for waiting till Thursday to read your email to see what the schedule is going to be, to wait till the last minute to see what we're going to do. To those of you who kept supporting, and we flipped some things around and we changed. You notice now we're back. We don't take offering anymore because we found out we don't need to. We put it in the back. It works just as good. We made online giving options. It all changed really quick. You adapted great, and I want to thank everybody for that. You can still give online. You can still give your credit card. You can still give in a variety of different ways. And so for this last year and a half, I want to thank you. And let me tell you, because I have the ability and the position and the things to know, there are so many churches who have not done well at all. For a lot, and the reasons for failure have been many. I'll go through them here in a second. I want to thank you for avoiding it. Because we have responsibility to be faithful witnesses to the good news. And we think that somehow we're under some kind of, intense hardship and persecution. And as Ryan mentioned this morning, can we just look at like the churches in Afghanistan and other places where they really know what the word persecution is? Some people in their church, there's this thing that they've been referring to, we could get into this for not today, a thing called the tribulation. You can read bad books written by guys who became millionaires that talk a lot about that. You know what most of the rest of the world calls the tribulation? Tuesday. And Friday afternoon. And Saturday. I was walking past someplace and they were showing images of Afghanistan this week. And there were crowds of people standing in a sewage canal. Do we need to go into detail what that represented? Trying to throw kids up over a wall with barbed wire on it. And I heard someone walk by, I guarantee you I heard this. They walked by and go, those people aren't wearing masks. Which is about level 586 of the things they had to worry about at that time. Standing at a sewage canal in 95-degree weather with people shooting. I'm just throwing that out there. So we have these intense time of changes. And there's dangers today facing the church that I think is unique, and I want to go through some of them. I think in some ways we will and must live with a new reality that is just maybe a little different. I don't know that it is that different going on. There's things that's just going to be part of life now that weren't before. They might go up and down a little bit. But we still live in a lot of ways. We live in fear of a lot of different things. We're over fearful at a lot of different levels of culture. We have things like stranger danger. Oh, kids, and except, look, any stats, strangers don't hurt our kids. Not the ones who do it. We think, oh, it's worse now. Look at any crime statistics from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's not. It just simply isn't. We've convinced ourselves that things are worse than they are. We fear the other people. We fear the other party. We fear them. It doesn't matter who we are. We all have a them. And we stand behind our barricades and we yell at each other. Our politicians tell us to be fearful. They crank up the fear so they can get elected. And the more fearful they can make you, the more powerful they can seem. I'm here to protect you from who? Them. And the guys on the other side doing the same thing. I'm here to protect you. Who? Them. Our news creates fear because it creates viewers. I guarantee you, if you read the headlines of newspapers, the headlines of your Yahoo or whatever online, and then read the story, very few times does the headline actually bear any resemblance to what's actually in the story. But all you do is read the headline. And it makes you fear. We fear anything that's new and different. We hear a term that we're not familiar with. Well, it must be them. It must be the liberals. It must be the Democrats. Must be the Republicans. It's them. I don't know what that means, but it has to be something with them. And it goes in our fear machine. I found this quote. Actually, my brother-in-law put this out there this week. And it was written in 1948 by C.S. Lewis. So it's 73 years old. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to quote him directly. I've changed one word. All I've done is change one word in this quote. And I'm going to read it with just my one word change. Okay? Here it says. This is just part of it. The question I often receive is, how are we to live in an age of COVID? I am tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year. Or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia, yeah, those Swedes, might land and cut your throat at any night. Or indeed, as you are already living in an age of cancer, in an age of pain, in an age of paralysis, in an age of air raids, in an age of railway accidents, in an age of car accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before any COVID came along. And quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways anyway. This is C.S. Lewis. I'm still quoting. Don't get mad at me. It's perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of premature death to a world which already bristles with it, and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but an absolute certainty. The first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we're all going to be destroyed by a pandemic, let it come, when it comes, let it find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting with our friends over a drink, and a game of darts. He was English. Not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about death. They may break our bodies. Microbes can do that. But they need never dominate our minds or our souls. And regardless of what side you are, if you think that what he wrote in 48 was political, you've entirely missed the point. The thing that will devastate the church today is militancy. When we become so entrenched about them or so frightened about a thing that we let that dominate. We get angry at anyone on the other side, anyone with a different opinion, anyone who doesn't look at the way that I look at things. And then division comes along. And even today, this is what's hurting things. Division is permeating certain segments of the church. And we cannot let this become a reality. We cannot let this spirit become part of any church at any place or at any time. Same dangers face society. The church must be a respite from out there. This whole verse I read in Ephesians chapter 3, Paul is saying this. He's saying this mystery that's been kept hidden through the ages, that only now has been revealed as now the Jews and Gentiles are called to be God's people together. When you live in unity despite your differences, you are announcing to every dictator, to every corrupt politician, we have a few in this state, you're making a proclamation to all of them that Jesus Christ is Lord and not them. And we don't need them because Jesus Christ is Lord. And the things that divide us out there are not going to divide us in here. The militancy that is prevalent out there is not going to be prevalent in here. And then the world looks and says, wait a minute, we can do it differently. That's fantastic. I don't know who that guy is, but he's on to something. That's a good line. I just wish God had given him a baritone voice to proclaim it in. But we all have to carry our own crosses. In a world of division, the church must be a place of healing. And now here's the big danger. This is the biggest danger today. In a world of isolation, often an enforced isolation, and we are only now beginning to see the results of this, and we will for the next decade or so. We did it. We unleashed it. To protect us from something, we unleashed far worse. Isolation. We need to be a place of belonging for everybody. You are welcome here. You're part of family here. You are loved here. Regardless of what is going on in your life, here you're somebody. Here you're loved. Here is grace. We're already starting to see developmental issues happening. That'll be more and more. There's a lot of reasons for that. One main one. But there's going to be a lot of developmental issues that belonging and smiles and support is going to help people through. Let me tell you what we've been doing. We've been busy in this last year and a half. As you've noticed, we know this. Last year we spent a lot of time and money and stuff. We completely redid a welcome center. No one will ever walk through there and bang their knee on that dumb brick wall that was knee high. And I know that part of it couldn't be seen, but with that brick wall gone, you're not going to fall down a step either. We grinded up concrete. I know it's a little slope, it's not even, but you're not going to fall off a ledge either. And we put new stuff. You don't have to worry about if stuff happens on the floor, we can just kind of mop it up. We got just a warm place. If you have something, if your family, if you have friends in the neighborhood, you go, where are we going to hold our little coffee? You call me. You can hold it right here. Your little neighborhood Bible study, your little neighborhood get together, you can do it here. I like any reason for anybody in the community to be here and be through here. Twice in the last 6 months, Eager and friends have put on beautiful nights of music here. I'm happy for those too. Anytime Eager wants to do it, you're welcome. We invested in ministry with the addition of Ryan and Leslie Welshons, and I think we hit a home run. I hope they think the same way. I'll ask them in February. But anyway. The good news is the next 2 months will be the best 2 months of the year. It's going to get really, really gorgeous and pretty, and the weather's going to be perfect. It's God's way of saying, it's my little payback for what's going to happen here to come. But anyway. Here's some other things we did way back at the beginning. And on the first day we took advantage of the PPP program. And it was, the church received $20,125. And that was forgiven. We established an endowment fund. I wish someone had done this 40 years ago, because it would have been a game changer for today. We want to be the game changer for 30 years from now, 40 years from now. We're just a year into it. Our endowment fund already has over $56,000 in assets. In the life of Mundelein Church of the Nazarene, there's never been a time in the history of this church where we have had more assets under our control than right now. We are not a bank. This is for use in ministry. This is for use in future ministry. But also never want to be the place that's one bad month, one bad decision, one bad downturn from the church closing its doors. I don't ever want to be just check week by week, gee whiz, hope. I don't want to be the guy that comes in every 4 weeks and is taking a special offering so we can keep the doors open. That gets tiresome. I'm a firm believer that if you are faithful to what God has laid on your heart, the church will do fine. When God's people start to ignore that voice in this area or any area, that's when problems happen. I want to thank you for leaving a legacy, and we're at this all-time strong point as a church, especially coming out of the last year and a half. That's a testimony to your faithfulness. That's a testimony to the foresight of some of the things that we've been doing. Well, that's a quick look at just quickly where we've been. I need to just spend a little time on where we're going, and I think that's important too. In just a short way, let me just say this. Ministry is not what Ryan and I do. It's what all of you do. Ministry is for everyone. And it's out there. On Sundays, we celebrate your good news. We love you. We support you. We give you a hug when things are going bad. We celebrate your goals, your joys, and everything else. That's what Sunday's for. And to equip you and inspire you and everything else to go out through the week. By the way, it's not our role to get it where you do everything perfectly. Because none of us do that. At all. Next few weeks and months, here's the next thing we do. We need to go a little young. We have this fantastic group of young adults, college students, 20-some students, and all this kind of thing. This is not our church and you guys get to come. This is your church. Yours. We're going to give you the keys. We're not going to tell you where to go. We're going to give you the keys. And we want you to take us somewhere. Because you can. In ways that we can't. I was an expert when I was 25 to 30 to talk to other 25 and 30-year-olds. Now I'm just the old guy. I think it's important we know that. We need to be nimble. What is your idea? What has God laid on your heart? If God's laid something on your heart, we're going to come alongside. We're going to try to equip. We're going to try to provide. We're going to give the resources. We're going to root for you. We're going to say, well done. We're going to do all that stuff. But we want you to go. The message, though, in all of this must remain central. We do have a message to proclaim. It's not just get together a lot with our friends. That's nice. All that's great. But it serves a larger message. And the message is not just Jesus died for you. Now people are going to go out to eat and say, our pastor told us that Jesus didn't die for them. No, that's not what I said. If that's the only message, then my question is, why didn't the cow in the manger step on baby Jesus' head? It'd have been over really quick, there wouldn't have been any suffering, and Jesus still would have died for us. And the short answer is this. It's because his life meant something. The things he did and said meant something. And we cannot lose that. He talked to us about loving and serving, even sacrificing. He talked to us about forgiving over and over and over, 70 times 7. He talked to us about doing unto others as we would have done to us. He talks to us about a lot of different things. He taught us about relationship with the Father. He talks to us about getting alone and praying. He talks about all kinds of areas of life. He talks about valuing children, about looking at the leper, the bleeding woman, the sinful woman, all the people on the margins he went to. He taught us what it's like not to just be delivered someday from this place, but about how living in a way that starts to transform this place. And about to transform me. For too often, for too long, the church has talked about forgiveness as a goal. Forgiveness is not the goal. I hate to break the news to you. Reconciliation and restoration are the goal. Forgiveness is getting the hurdles out of the way so I can start to make that happen. The result is transformation. We need to be changed. All of us. All of us. Our greed, our anger, our lust, our pride, all that stuff. It breaks relationships. It breaks relationships with each other. It breaks relationships with God. It even starts to foundationally break down how we see ourselves. We get people eventually so beat up, they're so isolated, they sit in a corner of their own isolation, and the world gets smaller and smaller and narrower and narrower and narrower. That's always sad to see. Our mission is to do what Jesus did, to go and make disciples. We are to go and to be ambassadors. Yet each of us have a ministry. There's something that you uniquely do. There's someone that you can uniquely reach. In fact, as I said that sentence, I bet almost everybody here had a thought pop into your head. There you go. There's something you can run with. All of you. It's a group of people based on your experiences. It might even be when you made the worst mistake. There you go. You can make a huge impact. Yesterday, I had an interesting day. I drove down to Olivet. I took Andy. Let me just tell you a little bit. Some of you gave sheets and pillows and desk lamps and laundry stuff, detergent and toothpaste and mouthwash and towels and bed sheets and money. By the time it's all done, he was starting with nothing. And between the gifts and the money and the gifts, I bet this church spent about $1,200 on Andy to get him to college. And I can tell you, I think I had 35 cents left over at the end of the day. It slowly went down the day, stuff they needed. I had $26 left, and I went to Myers, and I got a trash can and hangers and 2 of those milk crates that he could use, either store stuff in or use as extra shelves. And all 4 of those things were $25.70. So I had 30 cents left over from all that stuff. And so Mary actually reminded me of something last week. And this was when Andy was a kid and living over there at the apartments. He said, remember you used to buy popsicles and you'd have them in the freezer because you knew Andy liked them? And I'd forgotten of that. And here's the thing. In the midst of all the other stuff, I got to plan this, talk about this. There's a funeral here. There's a wedding here. There's the church service. There's this. I got to do this. I got board meeting. And all the planning, all the ministry, planning, planning. All that, this. I got checklist here. There's this. There may not have been anything more important I did or more ministry focused than buying popsicles. You say, I don't know what my ministry is. You can buy a popsicle. Or whatever equal thing that is in your neighborhood. And I had totally forgotten about the popsicles. And I never envisioned that kid would, one day I'd drive him down and drop him off at college and all that kind of thing. And can I say something? Pray for Andy. I'm not talking about academically pray for Andy. You just life, some of the base stuff that like my kids knew at 12 and 13 and 8. He's learning now that he seizes this opportunity. And thank you for being part of that. That's ministry. Popsicles are ministry. Towels are ministry. Tide Pods are ministry. As long as he doesn't eat them. Because that was a thing on the internet about 6 months ago. That was a thing. Stupid people were doing that because someone said on social media, I dare you to do it. Sometimes just evolution thins out the gene pool every so often. We have some people we know in another church that my wife and I used to attend, and occasionally we'll run into them. And we run into him, I'll call him Mike, and he's married. If you get to know Mike, once you start talking to Mike, it's hard to lose Mike. And Mike will just start telling you stories one after another, and none of them will really be particularly tangential to anything. And Mike misses social cues, but Mike keeps going and going and going. And you just know that once you say hi to Mike, he's just going to be right here for 45 minutes. And it's just going to be this thing. and all this thing. And every now and then, I'll see on a Facebook feed a little message from Mike, and it'll say, it'll be directed usually at Michelle and I, we sure do miss you guys. And let me just be truthful. There are times I go, here comes Mike. The next 45 minutes is going to be Mike. That's ministry. And all of us have a Mike in our lives. Something like that. Sometimes the almost thoughtless things we do while we're planning the next big thing. Ministry, ministry, ministry. Checklist, checklist, checklist. Flowchart, flowchart, flowchart. Harumph, 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 harumph. Mel Brooks movie. Harumph, 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 harumph. I need a louder harumph from over there. Thank you. It's kind of how we live our lives sometimes in the midst of all the other stuff. What's your other stuff? What's your ministry? What is God calling you uniquely to do? We just want to be the place where we can come on a Sunday. I was talking to someone at Olivet Wednesday this week, and he said, I need to get up to your church again. He goes, let me tell you something about your church. I went, okay. He's been here a couple times. And he said, when I come to your church, here's what I notice. You guys like to hang around afterwards. You guys love each other. I can feel that. I can sense that. I can too. Other people need to feel that. First time they come, they need to feel like they're part of that. That's what we can do. And there's a lot of things going in the world right now that is working against that. Everything's working against that. I am begging you, do not let the news work against that. Do not let your politicians tear you away from that. Do not let your list of fears tear you away from that. This is a unique time in ministry for God's people, like never before. Let's fill that void and step in that gap. And that's where we're going.